have the wind behind them this half. Colin Honan going ahead with it and taking the shot, and the goalkeeper gets to it. A great save it was.
Ray Thomas bringing the ball down. Ray takes a shot and it's poked and burned to, no it's not, it's saved by Noel Steele. Oh, what a great save.
You'd almost think that Wexford had the extra man, or where they're playing. That's nicely inside towards Gary Murphy. He swings the stick, a great save! A fantastic save! Two tremendous saves in this match by Joe Quaid, who is always capable of the most amazing of stops. This was so spectacular. Shelley gets away from his man. It's Paul Shelley winning the race against Frank Lowen. Can he get a goal here? Oh, it's a great save, and it's gone out for a 65. Paul Shelley did everything, but David Fitzgerald was equal to it. This was the moment when Tipperary probably felt, we're going to win this match. But that was a fantastic piece of goalkeeping by Fitzgerald.
Pucks here back to Coleman. Cahi IT Forgarty all. Can more meet the guard. Attention to Naila Cool. As he British is Aaron McCarthy Torres. Oh, so much into good joy. Damien Young. Fecha Showrish being tangled him off, and so much is fire.
O'Brien once again has a chance. Stopped by the goalkeeper. Comes out towards Falkland. Great save. It's gone for a 65. It's one of the saves of the championship. Brilliant stuff by Brendan Cummins. Wow, he was flying through the air. Cleverly playing it inside to Calman. Goal shot!
Oh, save, a brilliant save.
What a save. An amazing stop by PJ Ryan. Top drawer. Made that brilliant save against Waterford as well in the semi-final, and this is another candidate for save of the year.
And here's a testing ball. David down. And Seamus Callan. Here comes Lair. Oh, what a save! Colin Callanan's response was just instinctive, because Lair Corbett pulled the trigger, let fly, and Callan deflected it away. Brilliant save. One against one here, and it's Brick Walsh winning the ball, laying it off by his forward man. What's he going to do? Hits a shot. Oh, what a save! Brilliant save by Anthony Nash.
Foul on Brick Walsh there, but look at it, the pass inside the Mahoney. He played it past the defender. Anthony Nash didn't see that. It was about 6 or 7 yards away. If you can see it, Ellis has it blocked up. What a save.
It's Brian O'Sullivan fast up the box and there to get a touch of the boy. Sorry, I could deal again, Brian.
But into Sean O'Brien to cool a reach.
Hello and welcome everyone to the third of our Hurling specific workshops. We hope you enjoy the next 2 or 3 hours. Seriously, I'm not so sure how long these webinars are supposed to go on, but usually when I'm up in Galway there, Damien Coleman is watching the watch after an hour and a half or so. But look, at tonight we have a lot of content, and I want to apologise because it's long, because I could have cut it short. But I think we have a lot of material that's worth looking at, and you know, you don't have to drive home. You're at home, and you can switch off if you want to, or you can actually pause the transmission there as you would a YouTube, and come back and get a cup of tea and come back and watch it after. So look, just to introduce there backstage again, we have Damien Coleman there, Connacht Hurling Development Manager. You like to say hello there, Damien?
Yeah, hello everybody. I look forward to tonight's show again, and hopefully everybody will take home something out of it.
And we have Dara Cox then up from Sligo. Dara is kind of the master of ceremonies tonight, and between himself and Damien, they'll be collecting the questions during the presentation and have them ready for the end. And so Dara, if you would like to say hello there, please.
Yeah, hello Martin, and hello to everyone listening in. Huge amount of questions in already, which is great to see. So hopefully a lot of them might be answered before we get to the Q&A as well.
Well, the great thing about it is I won't be answering the questions tonight. We also have here backstage from my own county, Owen Murphy. So Owen, if you'd like to say hello there, please.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Martin. Looking forward to the seminar here this evening and answer a few questions as well.
So folks, you know, you can be thinking of a few questions from Owen. I'm not so sure whether he's going to tell you the truth or not. I hope he doesn't give away anything too important, but nevertheless, we'll see what happens. So Again, look at every presentation I give. I always, as I said a few times before, some of you are tired listening to me, but I'm going to haunt you with these because they're so important, whether you're in the goals or out the field. So, folks, look at, we have again there the essential skills of hurling, in my view. Anyway, you were listening into Eamon O'Shea last week. I think he came out with something very, very similar. His words might have been different. He was talking about knowing the vocabulary of hurling, and he talked about the basics. And these are just the areas we just have to keep driving home. Now, I'd ask you there, if you can look in on your screen, are there any of those skills that are not relevant to goalkeeping? And possibly the one on the top in blue there, possibly hooking. Keeper probably doesn't do any hooking, but again, two other little skills that we had in before, and they are more than essential for keepers: movement and not fouling. So keeper just has to be able to move and move well. And if the keeper fouls, at least it's a 21, and if the foul is, top drawer, it's a penalty. So I would say to you, if you go home with nothing else tonight other than what's on that screen in front of you, you won't be wasting your time. At this stage, I just want to say again, hello to some people from outside of Ireland. It never ceases to amaze me the amount of great hurling people we have in Ireland, especially outside of what would be known as the stronger counties. But I just have a little list of people, and I hope I don't leave out anything. We have people tonight from Charleston, Indianapolis, Paris, St. Louis, Colorado, Philadelphia, Vienna, New Zealand, London, Germany, Belgium, Canada, Boston, New York. So again, all credit back to Anya and Kelly and up in Crow Park, whose job is World Games. And Damien and myself would have been down in Waterford last year at the World Games, and it's just amazing the work that's going on, not just in Ireland but outside of it. So long may it last. So let's get going anyway on our little show tonight about goalkeeping. Again, the goalie, without a shadow of doubt, number one in every team, in my view, and I've been watching keepers for a long, long time. I have been lucky, I suppose, in recent years to have run some workshops where, from my own county, PJ Ryan, Richie O'Neill and David Hurgarty have come in and given their expertise. We've had Brendan Cummins and Christy O'Connor, and I've watched Damien Young there from Tipperary, who was featured in one of the earlier clips. And what I have noticed from all of these fellas, while they're all different, they're all saying the same thing. And if we don't listen to these people, well then there's no point in being involved. So as I said, we'll get going now with the goalie. It's on every team. Now, I remember Brendan Cummins a couple of years ago saying to me, we just have to do a little bit more for keeping, because it's an essential area. It's an essential position on the field. So last year there we came together and we put a little poster together, which we'll email out to you all tomorrow. And I'd like to thank David Sweeney, again a colleague up in Crow Park. David, who played for many years for Dublin and Ballyboat and St. Enda's, for the graphics. David drew all those little images, drew them by hand. So when you see what he can do with a pencil, you can only imagine what he could do with a hurl. And again, just looking at a couple of keepers on that poster, all phenomenal keepers. And we'll be meeting a few of them tonight. But tonight's format is, I suppose, broken up roughly into three areas. You're going to have a little bit of advice or pointing out of areas, and we're going to listen to a few top keepers, and we have a few little video clips as well, just to, I suppose, bring the field to the workshop. We can't go to Muhammad, can't go to the mountain, so the mountain comes to Muhammad. So throughout the presentation, you'll be listening to a few expert keepers, present ones, and I put three questions to them all. I asked them, what are the three most important areas a goalie needs to work at? 3 or 4. And then I asked them, what is the single most important attribute a goalie needs? So maybe yourself for a moment you can reflect, and I ask you, what are the 3 most important areas a keeper needs to work at? And that could be in training or out of training, but things that he just feels he needs to do. And what is most important then, if you were selecting a keeper, you know, what is the one thing you look out for? So we'll be focusing in on that as time goes on. So just watch this little clip now for a moment.
On towards Garvin McCarthy, didn't quite make it that time, makes it the second time. Oh, he scored! What a debut! Here, just look for the number 10 as the ball was hopping around there. It came back towards Garvin McCarthy. There you are, tennis style, and the goalkeeper badly sighted. A little look at the only goal of the match so far. And this is where it was fumbled by Tom Kenny, but Kenny got it forward there. You can see Garvin McCarthy fell on the ground initially, then swung on it, and right between the goalkeeper, angling this one in, 2 against 2, and the goalkeeper there to make it 3 for Waterford. Security provided by Stephen. Great-hearted player. And they're in the square already, and it's going to be a free out. John Gardner struck that.
Now, well, you might ask, you know, why would I put up a clip like that? And, you know, I remember the game well, 2004 Munster final, and I always had regard for keepers. But that day, at that moment, I just said to myself, wow, what kind of a person do you need to stand in between those sticks? I mean, we all miss balls in a game, out in the backyard and down in the local field, and no one minds much. But when you're standing out there in a Munster final and everybody is watching, and a ball goes in that would not go in 99 times out of 100, what do you do? So I ask you, what do you see there? But what I see, again, is mental toughness. Be able to do that, and if you watch Stephen Brenner there, I suppose, you know, the hardest ball to stop is the easy one. Same with a free taker. The hardest one is the simple one. But to recover from that, and as a couple of clips showed you, to have an outstanding game after, have the composure there to burst out in among attackers, take ball under the goal mouth, and end up winning a Munster medal. That's, to me, is where it all roots back to. It's easy to look at the fancy days, but you have to look at the dark side of it. And one other little clip here just to emphasise that.
He's had such a wonderful season. Goalkeeper Davy Fitzgerald, I think, deceived a bit by this one. He batted it down and agonisingly over his own end line, and there was no doubt about it. Hadn't made a mistake all through the championship campaign, and it happens in the final. Gerald Loughlin.
Now again, we all know how Davy Fitzgerald ended up as a keeper, you know, an outstanding keeper. But again, that's what he had to deal with in an All-Ireland final, and went on to win that medal, as did Stephen. So, Owen, if you switch on your microphone there for a minute, I mean, I had so many similar clips of you there, I just didn't know which one to put up, so I decided to put up none. But just a brief comment on that challenge, Owen, to you know, to deal with that simple ball that goes in. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's how you probably stay focused in the game, and that's probably when you're playing in goal is the hardest part, because for large parts of the game you can be somewhat of a spectator. You might be only just poking out the ball, so you do sort of feel like you know, you're only there barely taking part, I suppose. So for a goalie, it's very, very important to stay focused. I just am constantly talking to my full back line. It's just how I stay tuned into the game. Probably even more so, you're nearly talking to yourself, like, because the full back line probably don't even hear you a lot of the game. So it's just staying focused, because, as you said, you know, a handy one come in. If you're not switched on at all, look, unfortunately, you're the last line of defence, and you know, you just have to be tuned in every single second. And how I go with that is definitely just talking, constantly tuned in, talking where the ball is going to go, where it's going to land, trying to look to see where they're going to maybe hand pass the ball in to create a goal chance. So I'm trying to be that maybe step ahead. So that's what I'm constantly going through in my own head.
Okay, Owen, thanks very much. Right, we'll move on now, and we'll start looking at the position of keeper. And again, if you had never coached before and you just watch a few games and you ask yourself, you know, what does a keeper have to do? So I haven't any particular order on these, but you know, we'll try and look at a lot of aspects that just have to be looked at. So as a coach, and you're looking to put somebody in the goals, you got to choose well. You know, the day of picking your smallest player, your weakest player out of your 15 and firing them into the goals, especially a youngster that might be going into a big goals. I mean, that does not make sense to me. It never did. I would always be under the impression that you put your best player in the six. And if you're lucky enough to have a few good players, you know, you can spare one from the sticks. But the best of forwards will not score 4 goals or 5 goals. But if you have someone in the goals that's not comfortable there, it's very, very easy to concede 4 or 5 goals. So looking down through the little list we have there, folks, choose well, give it a lot of thought. You're looking for somebody that's safe, not spectacular. And you'll hear more about that going forward. You know, the magic saves are a bonus, they're icing on the cake. But by and large, you're looking for somebody that can deal with the bread and butter stuff. And what's that? Well, it's stopping and catching and striking. And what's striking? Well, it's clearing a ball if you make a save, and it's puck outs. You want somebody with a good hand. And the keeper has constantly to work on their hand. I just put in there, have a hard hand, playing a little bit of handball is no harm at all. But again, you think it's grand in the summer maybe, but you look at the winter, you look at the cold nights, hand, somebody that has a good hand, and if they have nothing else, that's a major, major attribute for a keeper. Obviously a good eye, and you'll hear more about it as we go along. Agile, footwork, step right, step left, step out, step in, hugely important. A quick rise, sometimes on the ground, sometimes on your knees, you know, a little skill you mightn't think of. And down at the bottom then, to be calm, and Owen has already mentioned that. Now, in my own opinion, I think, you know, at club level, you should give goalies outfield time, because it can be a boring place to be, and, you know, it can keep them fresh. The sub-keeper is a huge, huge issue on a club team. It's one thing to be a sub-keeper on a county team where you're the first choice back in your club. But if you're a sub-keeper in your club, you might never get a game. So, in my opinion, I would choose one of my outfield players to be the sub-keeper and give him a bit of, or give her a bit of goalie time in whatever challenge matches, a few nights in training. I would also give most of my outfield players are running the goals from time to time. It's good for them. It helps them to understand what it's like to stand in the goals. It helps them to understand what it's like to maybe drop what's supposed to be an easy ball into the net. So there are so many reasons for it. So I have a couple of little clips here. And again, I didn't get to tape any of the workshops we did for the last couple of years. And these little clips are from a little session we did up in Park Ratniska in Laois. And I'm grateful to Max Ramsbottom, who happened to have a camera with him that night and took a few shots. But they're real, they're ideal. And I suppose we're not looking at the top keepers in the country here. We're looking at ordinary players, boys or girls that came on the night. So couple of little notes here that you might watch.
Anyway, we all standing on your feet. That's it, that's the one. And again, it's reaction.
So again, very simply, a few moments from time to time, just practicing raising on the ball on the ground, because sometimes these poor keepers, they get knocked. So we'll introduce our first guest speaker here now, a man that's pretty well known at the moment because he collected an All-Ireland medal there a couple of months ago and an All-Star.
Hello, Brian Hogan here from Tipperary. The most important things that I concentrate on as a goalkeeper would be number one, hitting the ball against the wall, whether it's at home or in the ball alley, striking the ball as hard as I can, working on touch, working on my hands, moving the feet while I'm hitting the ball. I think it's very important. I try and do that every day in the week, and even try and do it before I go to training even times, just to warm up the hands and the wrists. The second thing that I concentrate on would be puck outs. Just before training, try and hit a few balls against the ball stopper behind the goals, just visualising where the ball is going, and then turn around, hit a few balls outfield, maybe get one or two players to go to different sections of the field and hit to them. Then third thing that I concentrate on would be shot stopping, just getting a few forwards to hit balls in different angles of the goals, working on the feet while we're doing it. Would work with the other goalkeepers as well on different shots as well, just making sure that we're moving feet in the goal mouth. Then the key thing I think for a goalkeeper to have is always concentrate on the next ball. It doesn't matter what's after happening, whether you're after hitting a bad puck out or a goal's after going in. It's important to just put it to the back of your mind and concentrate on the next ball, because you're going to be called into action very soon again, whether it's a save or another puck out. So next ball is just a very key point.
Thanks very much, Brian. Folks, you know, I think one of the greatest attributes a coach can have is to listen. You know, listen to people that have gone before you and listen to mistakes they've made and listen to, I suppose, things that have worked out for them. And equally so, to listen to the people that have been there and done it. So Brian there is the first, well, excluding Owen, he's the first of, again, a number of guest speakers we have here tonight. And we really need to listen to them. What are they saying? I mean, at the moment, Brian Hogan is the... he's won an All-Ireland medal last year, and he's the current All-Star keeper. So if we don't listen to people like this, you know, where are we going as coaches? We're moving on a little bit now, and we talk about positioning. Where should a goalie stand? Well, it depends on the ball. You've got the high ball coming in. Where does the goalie stand? Where does he want the defenders to stand? A close-in free. I'm not talking about a 21, a free 30 or 40 metres out. Where does the keeper stand, himself or herself? And where does the keeper want the defenders to stand? How many in the goals? That's a big one. And again, if it's a shot, you know, that can be scored, do you put 5 players in the goals? Now, if 2 of those players are not very good at blocking, well, then you're better off maybe with 3 in the goals. Sometimes you might be better off with 1. I think if Damien and Dara, no disrespect to him, and myself and Owen there were lining out, and there was a close-in free, I think you'd be better off Owen stood in on his own. Anyway, you see where I'm coming from. Long frees. Again, where do you stand? On the line or out on the edge of the square? Where do your defenders stand? So these are all things that the coach needs to be, I suppose, drawn out of the keeper, talking to the keeper, and, you know, advising. Where are the goals? When the ball is coming in, where are the goals? Because if you're standing a metre or a couple of feet out from the line, and the ball goes in over your head and drops into the net, that's a disaster. So I would suggest, you know, you can't turn around to see where the goals are, but you can put your hurl up and flick it back. And if it hits the crossbar, well, then you're probably on the line. If it doesn't hit the crossbar, maybe you better move back. The same if the ball is coming into the side and you think you're on the upright, and you can't even look at the upright because the player coming in taking the shot. So again, if you swing your hurl, tap it at the left or tap it to the right. If you don't feel the post, well, then there's a gap between you and the post. So these are simple little things. When in possession, and we often see this with youngsters, to make a good save, and they stand in the square, they stand in the goals, and they throw the ball up to clear it, and it's blocked in. So again, a simple little thing to practice: collect the ball, move out to the side. And several of the goalies would say, important, the second touch after blocking is vital. So you must practice that. So you make the block, that's grand. But if a little corner forward sneaks in and flicks it to the back of the net, well, suddenly it's not grand. So these are areas we need to work on. So again, another little clip here just to watch some of the exercises that keepers might be working on. And you'll find and see they're not much different than what outfield players will do.
Throw the ball anywhere, pick it up, and obviously you won't after it then. Well, again, you'll be going out after it, clear. Again, the end of the situation, you mix it, right? Any mix. Well done. Pick it quick. Here's the way you want to be fast. There again, the footwork. You want to be fast. You get out. Again, we're talking about footwork. Down to it. Footwork. Quick feet. Flick it, quick. Get rid of it. Anywhere at all. Just don't worry about where the goal is. Just practice the skill. Yeah, you're all down. 1-1. Flick it away. Get rid of it. How's the danger? Even if they're going out for a 65.
So what they're doing there is they're practicing the second touch. They block down the ball and get onto the second touch real quickly to either flick the ball out of danger or raise it up. Now, just as probably worth saying at this point in time, that many of the little exercises that we're doing tonight, they're going to be suitable for when we get back to play, because social distances, there's plenty of room here, you're out in twos, and there's so much you can do. So it might be no harm to be bearing this in mind. Now, our next invitation went out to, down the road from me in Laois, a super goalie, Ender Rowland.
Hi everyone, Ender Rowland here. So the 3 or 4 areas I practice the most as a goalkeeper would be striking, catching, first touch and shot stopping. Nowadays you have goalkeeping coaches, so you get to do a lot of them in training. Striking and catching for me, a lot of it would look like just a half an hour, 40 minutes you'll be out in the field before training. 80, 90 yards across the field, practice picking your man, running up and down the line, coming short, looking for the ball, and then thumping high balls back on top of over to and working on your high catching. It's just, I find it's a great way to get a lot of strikes in a short space of time. and it's something I like to do every night before training. Get there early and practice on that. So all you need is one other person across the field, just poking high ball across the field, picking out your man, shot stopping. You do that a lot. All you need is one other player or two other people. And one drill I'd like a lot would be one man takes a shot, you stop it or whatever, and you have to deal with the next ball. As you get to touch stopping the ball, there's a man trying to run in and collect the rebound, and you're trying to clear the rebound. First touch a lot for me would be just off the ball while on my own at home, working on your catching and your touch, left, right, moving, working on your footwork. That's a lot of the first touch stuff I do. And there's two areas I find most important in goalkeeping. First, to be just doing the simple things right. You could make an unbelievable save to a top corner or something, but if you can't catch a simple ball or first touch a simple ball into your hand, it's no good to you. So doing the simple things right and doing them well and doing them effectively. And the final and one of the most biggest areas that goalkeepers might fall down on has been being level-headed and calm. 2 minutes could be gone in a championship match and you could have made a simple mistake, or just can happen anyway. It can happen out the field and they don't realise it, and you can go on and win the next ball, but you could make a mistake in the goal and you mightn't have another ball for 10 minutes and that's playing on your mind. So being able to put that to the back of your head and forget about it and do the best you can for the next ball then.
Thanks very much, Enda. So again, folks, some serious advice there, blocking the ball and getting out to it, as we saw in the little clip beforehand. You might be a little bit worried about taking notes there tonight, but we're recording this session, so it'll be up online there for you in the next couple of days, and we'll give you the link to that. So don't worry, just sit back and tune in. Don't worry about taking notes. Now, again, communicating with backs. Very, very important, that the keeper and the backs are at one. And the keeper can see everywhere, whereas the defenders can't. So having, I suppose, the camaraderie there between the keeper and the backs, the trust is so important. Again, keeper gets the ball, move out of the danger zone, especially with young children. Move out, get the ball out first of all. Don't be too worried about, anything fancy. Small child in the sticks there, under 10, under 12. If you can save the ball, move out to the side. So that if a disaster happens, the ball might go out for 65. Hand passing to your backs. You block it, you catch it, that doesn't mean you have to clear it. So a little clip just working on that. So keeper catches, cornerback clears. Simple little exercise. Again, that's relevant for out the field players as well. The fullback catches it, he's under a bit of pressure, cornerback clears it. So we're moving down to Munster now for our next little bit of advice.
Hi all, Nicky Quaid here from Limerick. The three, I suppose, most important things and three things that I would work on most for goalkeeping would be striking, so long striking and shorter striking. I suppose puck outs is a huge part of everybody's game these days, so I spend a lot of time working on those, whether it's trying to find a man running 80, 90 yards away, or whether it's a bit shorter, looking trying to hit your half back line or midfielders. Second thing we'd always work on is shot stopping. Sometimes it would be with the coach or with the other goalkeepers, maybe just on sheer reflex, so just taking a lot of shots in close proximity, just within maybe for 30 seconds or so, and catch your breath and maybe go again. Or else we'd be looking at some shooting on the run from forwards from different angles. I suppose 90% of goals are scored from different angles of the goals. They're never really straight in front of you, so we'd be working a lot on your angles and shots taken on the run to mimic a game situation. And the last thing then that we would work on a lot would be your first touch, or your handling in a ball wall or in an alley. So striking the ball off the wall, working on your first touch, working on your handling, using different types of sliotards, wall balls, those types of things. They'd be the three things we work on the most. I suppose for me, what I feel the most important thing for a goalkeeper is to be the best at the basics. It's a position that there's no room for error really as such. So you be the best at the basics. So simple things like your simple ball coming in that you can control the first time, your handling under a high ball, let your 100% on your handling the whole time, and even your simple things like your jab lift, throwing ball that you have to run out to the jab lift, you just can't afford to be making little errors or running out over it, or not getting it up into your hand first time in goals. So those things, being the best at the basic skills, is probably one of the key things that I see for.
Thanks very much, Nicky. So folks, again, you might be starting to see a pattern emerging there. Nicky mentioned the basics. I call them the essentials. You know, the importance of a jab lift, he said there. And that is what it comes down to. Miss a jab lift, it can be a goal. Ball is ratcheted into the top corner and you miss it, well, that's going to be a goal anyway. You know, you'll be forgiven for that. But if you miss that little jab lift at the edge of the square, well, I suppose that's the time when it's nice to be living maybe 50 miles away from where you're hurling. But so we're moving on again, and communicating with the backs, we mentioned it a little bit earlier there. What do we mean by communicating with backs? Well, the first one is the full back, person standing in front of you. Who takes the ball? Do you take it or do you leave it? Because if two go up for the same ball, chances are it'll end in the net. Instructing the backs maybe to leave their man and go attack it. Let's say there's 2-on-2 inside and there's a man coming in with the ball or a woman coming in with the ball. So, you know, do your defenders, do they stay on their forwards and allow the person coming in with the ball to have a free shot? Or at some stage, do they have to take a chance, leave their own player and go for the person that's coming in? These are things that must be worked out between the keeper and the defenders. Letting the ball run through. You know, keeper has the confidence. The backs are supposed to be on the edge of the square. The forwards are not supposed to be inside it. So, you know, good communication there to let that ball run through, and the keeper has the confidence enough to take it. A little tip there again, just to look at it, we mentioned it already. Find out where you are in the goal by tipping the crossbar or the upright. Now, strike into the hand, little short drill again here from Park Niska in the County Laois. You know, Owen might tell you, for years when you could win a match Kilkenny training, it all started like this with all the players, just puck and ball. So the guys here, you know, they're keepers, but is there any difference between a keeper and an outfield player? They're pucking right, they're pucking left, they're moving a bit, they're pucking harder, and then they're pucking further and further away. PJ Ryan and James McGarry, former Kilkenny keepers, top bracket keepers, their training was doing what those two chaps were doing there, which was pucking ball at each other, starting off close and absolutely hammering them, and then moving further and further apart, so that eventually they were on the sidelines, which is 90 metres apart. So again, striking, right, left, low ones, high ones. There's nothing fancy about what needs to be done for a keeper. So let's hear what our next guest up from County Galway, Damien, up your country.
Hi, I'm James Cahill from Galway. 3 or 4 of the most important training techniques that I would use, or training drills I would try to implement into my schedule would be, one is brilliant basics, doing the simple things right, the roll lifts, the jab lifts, hand passing, catching, you know, simple small basic striking. So you do the brilliant basics well, and it gives you a good platform. 2 would be long distance striking. So nowadays the goalkeeper is such an important part of the game, so that requires an awful lot of practice striking in varying distances. And 3 would be hand-eye coordination. So that's on a ball wall with a teammate, whatever, just striking the ball quick against the wall, getting your eye coordination up to speed. Similar with shots, getting players to take shots on me. But probably the most important attribute of being a goalkeeper is being mentally very strong. So you could have games whereby you're very busy stopping shots in quick succession, or else you could have a game whereby you make an error and you have to just get on with it, forget about it, or you could have a situation whereby you mightn't touch the ball for 10-15 minutes and you have to be ready and on your toes the whole time. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I was caught there for a moment. I was trying to think of James's club. Capitagle, is it Damien?
Capitagle, yeah.
Capitagle, and just with James there, folks. Gary, you might, or Damien, turn off that microphone. We're getting feedback. Okay. You know, James was such an outstanding keeper growing up as a minor and that, and we all remembered him, and then brought it on to adult level. But again, what I'm taking out of that was the brilliant basics. Again, same message that we got from our Limerick man there a few moments ago, same message. The county doesn't matter, but the message is the same. Composure, composure, composure. Important out the field, vital in the goals. Composure after a score, in particular, after a mistake. And this is where the coach really comes into his or her own, where when a player, and in particular a keeper, makes a mistake, that, you know, you don't confound a mistake by telling a keeper or how bad he is or how bad she is. At this stage, you know, and the cornerback and the fullback have to say, it's gone, it's done with. The keeper himself or herself, you have to have that mentality that if you make a mistake, if a score goes in, like with Stephen there and Davy in the clips earlier on, you just have to look at the next ball and move on. And it's hugely important, I think, that you don't follow a mistake with another one. Settle down. Play the next ball safe. In my own opinion, you know, if you concede a goal maybe that you think you should have stopped. But if you try a little fancy short puck out with the next ball, well, I wouldn't have sympathy if the next one is put past you as well. I know what I would be doing. Well, I wouldn't be in the goals anyway, but I'd be putting that ball down the field as far as I can drive it. So we might hear in a few minutes what Owen thinks about that. But the goalie's function, folks, main function is to prevent goals, not create them. And I think we should never go away from that. When we're watching top class players and they can bring so much to the game, most of our players are not top class players. They're not inter-county players. They're club players. They might even not be senior club players. So, you know, what some of the guys can do on the television doesn't mean we can do them in the clubs. And stop that ball, keep it simple, prevent the goals, don't worry about creating them. Little clip here then is looking at striking, blocking, killing the ball, which is a huge skill. Killing the ball, for maybe people not familiar with the term, is instead of the ball bouncing off the hurl, that it kind of dies on your hurl. And the way to do that is you don't squeeze the hurl too tightly. You're in control of the hurl, but you're lightly holding it so that when the ball hits the hurl, it dies on it, you take the sting out of it.
What is it when the ball goes in match? You gotta be like that. Ball in deep to be able to catch the same. It's different. So we're going to kick it into the ball. Like that, that's the you can't outright that ball. Again, the nearer you block it to yourself, the better. Again, we're seeing the reason you have to move up. If you block it, it's there. If you're looking at it, it's too late. It's gone.
So what they're looking at there really is that the ball doesn't bounce a mile away from them. The nearer that ball can be stopped, you know, grand if you can catch it, grand if you can take it on the hurling into your hand, but if you can't, it's just popping barely in front of you, and then your second move. Out you go and onto it. So again, simple exercises. You just could not do enough of them. Let's go to Waterford.
Well, lads, Stephen O'Keefe here from Waterford. Martin just asked me to throw together a few things around goalkeeping, just a few of the skills of the game and maybe the most important attributes that I think are for the position. So I start with basically everything that can be done in a ball alley, because that's what I would use hugely outside of team training. I find it huge for confidence and practicing the basics or the essential skills of the game, I suppose, or to put it a bit better. So what I do is every time I go into a ball alley, I just start out with 30 strikes against the wall, low, get the first touch in, 30 strikes against the wall, head height, get the catching in, and then 30 strikes up high and get the high catch in. That'll just get the eye in, get the blood flowing, get you nice and loose and ready for action, I suppose. Another one of the drills I do then for reactions is I'd go up to the corner of the alley, let's say where the one wall meets another at a right angle. You go out, let's say 10 yards roughly. You just lash the ball down the middle. You don't know which wall you're going to hit it off first. Therefore, you don't know which way it's going to come back, and it's just a good drill to practice the reactions, I suppose. So I think the ball alley is huge for practicing the four most important skills of the game for a goalkeeper, which is your first touch, your striking, your catching, and your reactions. Outside of that, I suppose another thing I do is I'd bring the free taker up to the pitch. Tell him I'm going to hit the ball back out to him there when he hits the freeze, and essentially that becomes a bit of a puck out training for myself. Trying to find his hand every time, and then I suppose you're never going to get short, or you're never going to struggle to find a forward that'll come up to the pitch with you, to take shots on you really. I'd practice a lot of one-on-ones, because I suppose the theory behind that for myself is if you can stop a one-on-one, you'll find the other ones much easier. So that's another thing I do there, to practice kind of shot stopping, I suppose, in a game-based scenario. I suppose the last thing Martin asked me to go through what I think is the most important attribute for a goalkeeper. It's kind of a tricky one, I suppose. Obviously, you need to have your, the essential skills of the game down. But I suppose if you're playing at a certain level, obviously you have those. So above that, I would consider your mindset basically to be the most important attribute you can have. You're playing in a position that's, it's pretty unique. I'd argue the pressure is a hell of a lot higher than in other positions, in a sense that, unfortunately, it kind of comes with the territory that if you make a mistake, it's going to adversely, affect your team's chances of winning. It's a huge responsibility and it's a huge amount of pressure. So I suppose the mindset you have, and not only the mindset you have, but the mindset you portray to your defenders and to your management is very important. I know a lot of people sometimes say that goalkeepers are a bit tapped or they're a bit mad, but I think that's almost it's almost purposely portrayed that way, because I think a normal person would be on the goal thinking this is a lot of pressure, or if they make a mistake they nearly go into their shell, and that sense would reverberate around the team almost, and you could see defenders thinking, oh, this fella behind me is in a bit of bother, and management thinking, oh, this fella is in a bit of bother, and almost there's panic then around. Whereas sometimes when they think the goalkeeper is a bit tapped or a bit wired or he thinks a bit differently, they seem to have a much bigger sense of confidence in that. If he makes a mistake or two, there's not that same sense of panic, because they think, oh, this fella's a bit mad, he's a bit wired, he thinks a bit different, sure, he'll be grand, he'll bounce back from that. Whereas I think if you portray a certain sense of normality almost, or shyness, that people will be a bit more nervous around you when the ball comes near you and stuff, and you need to be able to portray that, this is your kind of zone, and everything that comes into you is absolutely going to be dealt with 100%. Even if you're faking it a little bit, which I have done in the past, because it's something that's very hard to practice. You kind of need to be in the situation again and again and again before the high pressure situations become just another game, just another normal day at the office. So I think, and I'm sorry if not explaining too well, but I do think the mindset that you have and the mindset you're portraying to those around you is the most important attribute you can have as a goalkeeper. So that's it from me anyway. Hope I didn't shite on too much, and hope it made some bit of sense for you anyway.
Thanks very much, Stephen. You certainly explained it very, very well. And, folks, such advice there. And it's now fairly clear why Pádraig Manny is one of the best strikers and free takers in the country. He always has somebody to puck the ball back to him. Just on it, just in my own club in Castlecomer and Kilkenny, I hope he's not watching in, but we've got a keeper, and he's 46, Tom Brophy, and he's into six since he was 18, and has never been poor. And that's unbelievable how important to the team he is. And the worry is always what will happen when he stops. So, there's a life career in it. There's probably 3 careers in it, if you want to look at it that way. Good keeper, just so valuable. Footwork, again, my head straight away, I can see they have a Hurling doing sessions there. I can see PJ Ryan, Richie O'Neill, I can see Brendan Cummins, I can see Christy O'Connor, and footwork. So, we just have a small little clip here that's, you can make them up yourself. There's no right way to do it, there's no wrong way to do it, but getting your player moving forward, moving back, moving sideways. A little tip I would have picked up off of the lads, low centre of gravity when moving. If you're standing tall, it's easy fall back. Whereas if you're kind of slightly crouched sometimes, easier get forward, easier get back. To be able to reverse and advance. A little game there, you could say you can play it with children for a warm-up, but you can also play it with adults for 4 or 5 minutes, a little game of tag or tick, whatever you call it, where 1 or 2 players are on and they're trying to tap the rest of them, that you're just twisting, turning, dodging. Cones, ladders, etc. All of those things, they'll all add to footwork.
Take a couple of steps. I'm actually not too worried if you drop the ball. I want to see you move, all right? I'm not worried whether you catch it or not. I just want you to move. I don't want you to take it again. And again, move it. Stop. Hello, come on. All right.
So again, all the lads on the workshops, you know, guys, you know, they're going to be doing that, and when they're doing it on the workshops, it means they're doing it in their own time as well. So we're going down now to, I suppose, what's called the real capital of Ireland, and one of Kilkenny's great adversaries.
Hi, how are you? Anthony Nash here from Cork. Just to thank Martin for the opportunity to speak. Look, first of all, I'd just like to say that I'm probably going to be similar enough to the other goalkeepers that are going to put up videos here for you. I'll try and give it as maybe something different if I can. I suppose I'm around a long time. I started off in 2006 with the senior hurler, so I would have learned from other goalkeepers throughout the time as well. So, look, just to give an idea what we would have worked on over time. The important things for me, obviously, is different teams like play at hurling. There are different styles, different ways. So for us, I suppose striking would be my biggest thing anyway. Trying to find a guy either on the run, set position, long distance, short distance. Depending on how opposition set up, you could have a situation where you're just giving the ball to the cornerback and you're trying to get it as accurately to his hand to take the pressure off him as much as you can, or to halfbacks or midfielders or on the move, or half forwards, whatever like that. So look, you're kind of working on different styles of striking. So it's not just one style where, like when I would have started, Jesus, I would just go back into the goal, get at your puckle hurley and drive the ball as long as you can, compared to the game now where you need to get the ball as fast as you can, turn around, try and find a guy in a good position. So striking is number one for me, I suppose, really at the moment. Like I think, look, stats speak for themselves. I'm not giving any secrets. So something like 30 puckouts a game for each goalkeeper approximately. So you need to make sure that they're as influential for your own team as possible, compared to maybe, look, depending on how the game goes, 2 or 3 shots a game. Okay, so striking for me would be my number one. Number two would be, do you know what, surprising enough, maybe it's just hurling, just your close control. Like I suppose if your hurling is good, like you look at the good goalkeepers around the country, Nicky Quaid, Owen Murphy, and a few other lads, they were hurled outfield for their clubs, so they'd have had their skills, from outfield as well. So first touch, control, catching the ball and stuff like that. So for me, I think once you're hurling and your skills are good and you're confident in that, then the rest of your game will follow on. So like, listen, wall, ball, simple as that. You can get your crazy catch nets, your rebounder nets, things like that. Get a guy to strike the ball to you. For me, once my first touch is good and I'm confident that, you know, and what would I say, an easier ball coming in that I can control it maybe. So that for me, it's just the basic skills of hurling. I know it can be as exciting as people want to hear, but I'd actually work a lot of the similar skills to the outfielders. Your first touch, control, handling, stuff like that. And maybe, I suppose people might say it's probably something that I need to work on more is shot stopping. Like, look, I just think shot stopping, we do practice it 100%, and I do practice it a lot with the lads, but I just think for me, it kind of comes more instinctive and natural to make a save. Like any of the good saves that I've made, probably you can count them all easily enough, but like, you don't know what's going through your head, you just react to it. So I suppose just maybe training through that and getting your body in a position where you can get yourself there. So that kind of leads on into another important point for me, and finally is just the positioning around the goals. It would have been a big thing for me before, that I would have worked on. Ger Cunningham would have put an idea in my head there years ago, or just marking out posts and stuff like that. So positioning as well. So look, hopefully that helps. Look, that's my idea around things. Other goalkeepers may differ what their strengths are and what their opinions are. So look, hopefully that helps any bit. Thanks again for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thanks very much, Anthony. And again, folks, just noting, Anthony took a few pointers from Ger Cunningham. So he listened to somebody that went before him. That's so important. You know, everybody in every club, there's somebody there that went before you. The existing keeper, the former keepers, you talk to them, you know, what are the points, what are the important parts of it, and we pass on the knowledge. And if you're prepared to listen and you're prepared to, I suppose, spread the gospel a little bit, everybody can improve. And again, going back there, none of these players, I didn't prime any of them, I just simply asked them the question, 3 important areas you work on, and you can see the pattern emerging further and further and further. Now, catching, again, Anthony has mentioned it, catching. But I mean, you can just talk about catching and say catching is catching, but there's more to it if you really look into it. There's catching the close ball. There's catching the ball in front of you. There's catching the ball from the sides. There's catching a bouncing ball. There's the head height ball. I'm reading here, but it's important. There's a lobbing ball. Then there's the lobbing ball, the ball that's coming in, but there's a distraction. There's somebody standing on the edge of the square, swinging a hurl or just running across in front of you. Getting your body behind the ball. Catching to the tummy. All of those little parts need to be worked upon. And got a little tip from Christy O'Connor there, watching Christy and Claire giving a couple of workshops, and he recommended, which makes sense, especially with younger players, maybe using a soft ball, that you're not just standing in the goals and lads taking shots at you and pumping you with a big hard slitter. You know, use some of the Go Games balls maybe for a while, that if you don't miss it, you're not going to get, you're not going to go home with a bag of bruises. So that's an important little element. But other than that, you know, giving time to all types of ball at different stages, unopposed sometimes, and then with a player maybe standing in front of you, running across, that might just catch your eye, that you really have to watch the ball, watch the ball, watch the ball. Okay, so we'll move on to another little clip.
Hey, that's why we're doing it. Off we go. Little by little, put it a bit away, make them move. Little by little, make them move a bit. Okay, and we're still fucking reasonably handy.
It's an exercise you do from that. You know, they're nice.
I was out in Barrahouse yesterday for our school for an hour and a half. And I said to him, there's too many guys to use it, you know. And I said to him, and he got the Hurling at home.
Hey, this one. Go to the field.
Tennis racket. Yeah.
It's harder you're able to block it, all right?
Yeah.
You're not blocking too
Go to the
well,
wall.
make it easy. If you're blocking fairly well, hit it harder in it.
That's what you
Again, watch it. We're looking at eventually absolutely hammer ball at people.
That's the whole thing, it's not just down.
On the low one, again, you think about it. That's the one. Block the low. That's right. You're not doing nothing. All about practice. Let's throw the ball to each side. And one to the middle and back. This time go maybe a yard or two to each side. And one in the centre. Again, cover the right, cover the left, cover the centre. Again, if they're just training on their own, they'll probably all go to their strong side. We may have to go to the other side.
So striking right, striking left, catching some of them if you can, if not stopping them. But most importantly with that little one, getting practice with the easy ball. You know, we all think it's great standing the goals and leather balls at each other, but it's often that little simple one that gets you. Why? Because maybe we don't practice it. The free takers that practice all angles, but how many of them practice the one that's straight in front of the goals? That's the one where, you know, you're just expected to tap it over. You listen to the television, you listen on the radio, a tap over. Well, there's no such thing as a tap over. So we'll move it on here now. Catching again, blocking, killing and rising. How do you do it? How do you practice? Yes, again, you get off to it 1 versus 1, 1 opposite 1, various distances. I preach it and preach it and preaching it. Working the hand, body catch, side catch, moving the keeper to the side, not just hitting them straight at him, moving to the right, moving to the left. And again, emphasizing it again. The low one, the high one, the bouncing one, the trickling ball. Give them plenty, or give her plenty of the little trickling ones. To rise it, to move out of the goals. Control it low, control it high. Flick the ball to the side.
No, we were over in, I was up in Kaigo.
Again, hopping the ball in front of your keeper. So head height shot now, we're looking for a block.
Again, coaches, they're blocking him here, they're blocking him there. Sometimes the bullets come, they won't be able to catch it. They're going to put it block. Let's get each other. Right, lads. We're all blocking out this. I want you all blocking with the heart. Don't catch them. Block. Throw them head height or even slightly over the head. Yeah, lads, it's time. Go that height. Take it on the hurl again. Block it with the hurl. Don't put the hand out this time. So hit him kind of hard. Hurl out. Up you go. Hurl out to him. See what we're going to. Take the control. See straight away. Very good ahead already. Hey lads, a little bit harder. A little bit harder. Okay. Hey lads, hold it up for a second. Well, this time, very hard. I want you to practice killing the ball. How do you kill the ball? Hold the hurl firm, but not too tight. You squeeze the knife on the hurl, solid, the ball is going to play. So the hurlers will actually play the kill. We just get to do that there for a moment. Use it like that. Off we go, try and kill that ball. You can feel it kind of hit by your head, right? That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. Don't worry about this. So again, you're trying to trap the ball and into your hand. Trap the ball into your hand. It becomes high, everything. Trap it. You have to hit it very hard now. Hit it very hard, right? Okay.
So there, folks, you know, we're moving from just blocking. Obviously, you'll catch it if you're able, but balls can come in so hard sometimes you can't catch them, so you're blocking them. So we start out by just blocking, and then we move on to see can you actually trap or kill that ball on the hurl. A skill that just looks so easy to the top keepers, but has to be worked on. And again, some of the lads have spoken about that exercise already. So we're moving back over to Damien's country again now to hear what Colin Callanan has to say to us and give his little bit of advice.
Hi guys, Colin Callanan here from Galway. Thanks for having me on and contributing to this webinar. I understand that this is part of a webinar series, and with that in mind, I want to keep this short as I can, and if anybody wants me to explain anything further or expand on anything, certainly there's no problem in reaching out. Okay, so thanks to Damien and Martin there for putting this together. I have two questions I was posed with here, so I'm going to answer those as best as I can. The first one, for a goalkeeper, can you go through the 3 or 4 areas that you work on the most? Okay, so in simple basic terms, I suppose one would definitely be my striking. Or distribution is the buzzword that seems to be going around these days. So that's going to take up, you know, a big percentage of most of the sessions, and even any extra work that a goalkeeper is doing, you can never do enough work on striking. So lots of ways obviously you could do that. For example, if you have somebody positioned maybe 20-30 yards apart, you're hitting maybe 3 to 4 balls to that person, then move them a bigger distance, maybe 45-50, do the same again. Can you strike that ball straight to the receiver's hand? Move them again to the 65 or 70, or maybe a little bit further towards the half forward line. Do the same again. A simple enough progression on that would be to bring some movement into it. So ask your receiver to move left and right and try and repeat the process from those distances. And a further progression again would maybe introduce somebody in between you to maybe intercept any ball that's gone a little bit off target, just to, you know, to help as a guide to improve your accuracy. The second thing I would look at is maybe speed of reaction or reflexes. So in a nutshell, your shot stopping. Your speed of reaction is also interlinked into your speed of decision. So there's two different things going on there at the same time, but they're very closely interlinked. Okay, so speed of reaction refers to, you know, how quickly you can initiate or start a movement, and then the speed of the decision, has the keeper made the right decision, is the body position good? So there's loads of ways to do shot stopping drills. I'm not going to go through them here, but obviously there's hundreds of different ways you can do that. Third one I would pick out would be handling, so high ball situations. So just a quick example here on this is I did a little bit of work there before Christmas last year with a club goalkeeper, and he came to me in the middle of the session and said, my handling isn't very good. I struggle under a high ball in that situation. So I asked this player to go to the middle of the field. So he walked right out to the middle of the hurling field. I hit a high ball from the 21. He caught it, no bother. I called him back in and I said, you're obviously able to hit the high, or be able to catch a high ball. He said to me, it's fine out there, but if you move me into the goal, then it's a problem. And I said, so my answer to that was, it's obviously catching the high ball isn't the problem. The technical aspect of catching a high ball was fine. It was the fear of dropping the ball into the net. So it was actually a mental problem. It wasn't a technical problem. So trying to, I'll go into maybe mindset in a few minutes in the different part of this. But dealing with high ball situations, that's very important for a goalkeeper, and you can never do enough of that stuff either. So catching the ball from different heights, different angles, it's not something I would shy away from, even on a bad evening. Sometimes nearly that's the best time to do it if you get a wet evening. Another thing to watch out for is if you get an evening where there's a low sun, it's a great time as well to practice that aspect, because you know yourself, you could turn up to a match at any given day and there could be all different kinds of you know, weather outcomes promised, and just you're throwing a curveball with, you know, a shower in the middle of a match, or just having to deal with a low sun for half an hour. It's not easy, but you have to practice it. The next question I see here then is, can you single out the most important aspect of training for a goalkeeper? So I've gone through some of the technical stuff there already. So something that maybe goes against the grain a little bit, or maybe gets overlooked a little bit, but I think is hugely important, is actually mindset. So kind of, you know, positive mental reinforcement for a goalkeeper is hugely important. For me, playing in that position is just a different kind of a pressure, and you have to mature into the position a lot quicker than, say, an outfielder gets the same time afforded to. The training is different, and while that's an attraction for some goalkeepers, it can hinder progress for other goalkeepers as well at the same time. Visualization is very important. Seeing yourself in different scenarios, playing those scenarios out in your head, asking the questions, what is the best way to overcome this typical scenario? What are the answers to that, and how does it affect what you do in your training session, and how can you carry that through to a game? That just allows instinct to take over, I suppose, and just keeps muscle memory sharp, so that when game time comes, you're not standing there caught in two minds, wondering, should I catch or should I control on the hurl, for example, whereas you've just gone over it, you've played out the scenario in your head, you've practiced, and it just happens and you make the right decision. I hope that makes sense. If you want me to expand on any of that, like I said, there's no problem with reaching out on any of this. It's a great initiative, I think. There's not too many resources out there for goalkeepers to go to, not too many platforms where you can see, you know, different training methods, and that's probably another big thing, is just keeping an open mind with all of this. The way I would have trained myself, you know, 10 years ago is far removed from what's going on these days. It's constantly evolving, and that's the biggest thing, just keeping an open mind. Game-based situations are always going to be a winner. Okay, so going back in the day, you'd have seen lots of drills where you would be just pummeled with shots for 10 or 15 minutes and doing press-ups and sit-ups and all sorts. And, you know, is there really relevance to the game? That's the question you have to answer. So look, I hope that helps. And thanks again for having me on. I hope that somebody or any of you were able to take a few little bits from that. And looking forward to seeing the rest of the series. Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Colin, and some wonderful advice there again, folks. The last point he made there just sticks in my head, relevance to the game. And our next little clip now, I'll bring that in. You know, there's no point in doing anything that's not relevant to the game, whether it's as a keeper or an outfield player. I mean, training should be based on what you experience in the game. And having 5 balls being hit at a keeper at the same time, it might look spectacular and look whatever, but you know, it doesn't happen in a match, so I wouldn't see any point in doing it. So we just again look at catching and blocking and shot stopping. A ball is coming in. Do you bat it? Do you catch it? Do you block it? Or do you kill it on the hurl? And a keeper has a split second to make up his mind or her mind on that. And these are the scenarios that, you know, they have to do them so many times. I think, again, Eamon O'Shea referenced some soccer player the other night about doing 1,000 kicks in practice to maybe pull off one in a game. And it's the very same with goalkeeping. You have to experience 1,000 shots in a particular way to pull off one in a game. High, low bouncing, front and side, stationary striker. Now, this is important. When you're standing in the goals and you're doing your training, you got to practice taking shots from a stationary striker, but then you got to practice taking shots from a moving striker. And moving right and moving left. That's someone knock off your speaker or your loudspeaker there, please. Okay, sometimes you're going to have one striker, sometimes you might have more than one, but not at the same time. So you might have players running across from the right, you might have a player running across from the left, a player running down in front of you. All of those different scenarios that crop up in a game. And again, a one-on-one situation. Now again, I might advise using the softball for this, where you have a player coming in on you you know, chances are it's going to be a goal. It's probably a 90% goal chance, but you can make a quick decision. Do you approach the player coming in or not? If you approach him or her, well, that might put a 90% situation maybe into a 70% situation. So these are all little things you got to practice on. Now, all the speakers so far have mentioned the mindset. And a little simple one there that I picked up after somebody who I don't know. If all outfield players are doing their jobs properly, then the goalie will only have to puck out after wides. So, you know, that is important, that when that ball goes into the net, whether you blame yourself or you don't blame yourself, it doesn't matter. It's the next ball. And if you don't have to say it out loud, but in your own mind, and Steve O'Keefe mentioned it there, in your own mind, you say, well, somebody else made the mistake for that player to get the shot off. Now, so let's have a look at this little clip. Now, again, the sun was in the wrong place for this one, but you'll get the idea. You know, it's taking shots from the left, from the centre, and from the right. And, you know, you got to give the keeper a few seconds to react. He won't have 3 balls coming at him at the same time in a game. Now, again, you can progress that as much as you wish, or the players can be on the run from the various places, and you can progress it a little bit further by having a player on the edge of the square ready to tap it into the net. So the keeper is working on the block, and then the keeper is working on the second touch. So all of these little scenarios. Okay, so we have our resident speaker coming on next now with his little bit of advice.
Hi everyone, how are you? Owen Murphy here from Kilkenny. The 3 things that I feel goalies should be trying to practice in training and practicing every night in training would be, starting from the bottom up, would be their footwork, incorporating that with their positioning on the goal then as well. Second thing would be their first touch, incorporating that with shot stopping. And the third thing would be being comfortable on a dropping ball, be it collecting it here, catching it on the crossbar, catching it above the crossbar then as well. So the first thing with the footwork, you know, basic enough through ladders, sideways. Obviously, moving sideways for goalie is very important to get in, cover those angles, you know, and around cones, making sure that the keepers are not very rigid. So, you know, that the feet are light, moving light then as well, so they can just get around quicker. The second thing, as I mentioned then, would be the first touch and incorporating that in with shot stopping. It's very important. Obviously, keeper probably has to have a better first touch than an outfield player. You know, if he can get the first touch straight away into his hand, great. But you know, incorporating it in with the shot stopping then as well is that if you can't get it into the hand the first time, that it has to be very, very close. Like, you know, you can't be saving it into an opposition's path and he's getting a free shot at goal. So, you know, once they do make the save, it's very, very important that they're getting off the ground quickly to get the second touch on the ball. It's making sure that they're getting it out of danger then as well. The third thing, being comfortable under a dropping ball, a high ball, you know, and that's, you know, as I mentioned, catching it on the chest, catching it on the crossbar, a dropping ball maybe 15 yards from goal, 20 yards from goal, and they have to dart out and collect it as well. And you might have to incorporate in the first touch in that scenario then as well. So, you know, and sometimes if a keeper is thinking about it too much, it won't come naturally to him. So, you know, in some cases in training, you might need to pull him out of the goal and get him to do the high catching drills, the first touch drills out of the goal, the feet work then as well, outside of the goal. So, you know, and be changing things up, obviously keep it interesting. And most important thing I feel for a goalkeeper to have is a level of comfort on the ball, that, you know, regardless of what scenario they're in, regardless of how the ball is going to come in, be it a shot, first touch, if they come out and claim a ball 20 yards from goal, they're essentially an extra back now, and they have to be coming off the line to take it off the full back line also. So, you know, they have to,
be working on that before training, during training, even after training. And when once training finishes, once they go home, there has to be work done in an alley. So, the speed to do everything then after that is vitally important, because you don't get any time. The game is quickened up so much now that even goalies have less time on the ball. So, it's very, very important that they're comfortable on the ball.
Thanks, Owen. So again, folks and boys and girls, any of you that are watching in, you're getting the same advice from all of these top keepers, and it has to sink in. Simple things: go to the alley, practice on your own, etc., etc. Now, striking has been mentioned by every keeper there so far, and striking involves, as I said, clearing the ball or involves the puck outs. Again, how do you practice it? Obviously, one opposite one. Stephen O'Keefe is down there and Paddy Manny is pucking the ball back to him, or vice versa. Distance, getting it long, getting it longer, and then tying in the accuracy. It's one thing to be able to strike a ball 70 metres, but can you strike that ball 70 metres to go between two poles 10 metres apart, 5 metres apart, 2 metres apart? So accuracy, to a pole or into a zone. And then Stephen, I think, mentioned it as well, to a moving player. So you might be pucking a ball out to a player out around midfield, but he or she is running across to the far side. So can you put that ball, whatever it takes, 10, 15 metres in front of them, so that they're actually running into it without breaking stride? Vision there is something I would have picked up on from a lot of the keepers, that you're able to scan the pitch just before you strike that ball, that you're able to change your mind. That if I look out the field, well, it won't be me, we'll just say, Murphy looks out the field and is about to strike to the left half forward, but suddenly he notices maybe the right half forward in a better position, that in a split second he's able to change his mind and divert that ball somewhere else. Anthony Nash, I know, is very good at looking out one side and pucking the ball to the other side. So all of these little things have to be practiced, I suppose, unopposed. And again, just down there at the end, put the forwards into the goals regularly, so that they can see what the goalie sees. It's one thing to be up the field roaring for the ball and expecting the keeper to see you, but there can be 12 or 14 players between you and him or her. So giving a forward or an outfield player a bit of time in the goals can be a learning curve in several ways. This little clip now, again, is just working on the strike and working on the puck outs. And I think it was Brendan Cummins I got a little tick from there about using the juvenile goals, because it's one thing striking a ball out to a player 70 metres away, but generally in a match there's going to be a few players in between. So the goals is kind of representing the players that are in between that you don't want the ball going to. So sometimes it can be, if there's nobody in between you and the player you're striking for, it can be a direct bullet of a shot. But if there's somebody between it has to be some form of a lobbing shot. So again, the little goals there is a help. And needless to say, the player on the far side of it could be a forward or a midfielder practicing their shooting. So we have Owen coming up here again now with a little bit of a practice, again, just trying to bring the field to the workshop here tonight.
Hi everyone again. As I mentioned in the previous video, I was going to talk about some things that you can do with your goalkeepers when you get back on the pitch. We're going to imagine that this is my goal here, and changing up the angle. So using your footwork and actually getting the goalkeeper, getting them used to the positioning on the goal, getting their positioning right on the goal, and covering the angles then as well. It's very important when there is shooting taking place that is coming from different angles, because a lot of the shots come out from the side. They very rarely come straight down the centre. So one that we do, we incorporate different cones, different drills into it. If it's close here, we'll have a cone maybe 5 or 6 yards away over here. What we're doing is going shuffling around the cone. We're coming back wherever the ball is. We're going to be facing it coming in either side. If it's in the centre, we're coming around the cone and we're adjusting, making sure that we're covering the angles. So it is important that you get the goalie used to moving on the goal, moving on their feet. A lot of that will be going side to side. A couple of things that they can be doing now at the moment during this time. If they have access obviously to any sort of a wall, we don't have access to a high wall, a gable end, so you sort of have to improvise in that regard. just a couple of things here, making sure that they're moving into the ball, getting their body behind it. So if we're going low, what a goalie should be doing is obviously, and then obviously using this as part of their warm up then as well, getting used to the movement. So we're going right. So they're getting their body behind the ball, getting the movement in it, moving away from danger then as well once a game is taking place. So to improve the touch then as well, which is very important, their level of comfort on the ball. So even if we want to go in a little bit closer, check the sun in my eyes here as well. So we're just moving to the right. All right, moving to the right, left, right. So what they're doing is moving into the ball, striking left and right. Again, back to the level of comfort on the ball. They can strike it off the left if they're going out one side, strike it off the right if they're going out to the other side. But making sure they're getting into the moving involved in the drills as well, that everything is not taking place static, sort of flat-footed. They have to be on their toes constantly. And the catching then as well. So, as I said, we don't have a high wall here. So something that they can be doing is just bouncing the ball off the ground. And obviously down, should be taking a few steps away on the pitch then as well, getting away from the goal behind them. So I just find this time of the year it's much more beneficial for myself using an actual sliotar. Normally at the start of the year I would use a wall ball to sharpen up. It'd be coming back an awful lot quicker. Just like the feel of a normal sliotar on the hurl, feel it in my hand at this time of the year as well. So
Thanks again, Owen. So again, folks, you know, striking left and right moving. Where have you heard that before? Now, the three questions that I put to all the goalies at the start about, you know, three of their tips, what are the things they think are most important. So I very, very roughly summarised them here. You can do it yourself in your own time. And what I have picked up from Nicky and Owen there, Colin and James, Anthony, Brian, Enda and Stephen, where every single one of them mentioned striking. Striking, shot stopping, first touch, call it what you like, handling, you know, people have different words for it, hand-eye coordination, ball alley. Tip 4 there from a few people, footwork again, positioning, reaction. I just love it there, the brilliant basics. I just love that because they're so important. Essentials in my word, same thing. Positioning, Enda there mentioned getting the simple things right. How many times have we heard that before? Whether you're number 1 or 15 or 25, get the simple things right. And the attributes, and this I suppose comes down to the coach. You know, somebody that is very good at the basics. Now, mindset, we've got to work on the mindset. People have to be mentally strong to stand in the goals. Now, I would just, you know, like to say, we watch the top keepers and we watch them make mistakes. So, you know, what do we expect from our own players? Even if it's a senior club in a strong county, if it's a junior club in a strong county, if it's a club player in a Midland county or one of maybe the weaker counties, and you bring that down the line to under 18s, under 15s, under 10s or under 12s, you know, what are our expectations? So it's so important, I think, that the coach understands the keeper and supports the keeper and tries to make it attractive to stand in the goals. And it's hugely important that the players understand that it's no simple place to stand. And that's why I would say again, put everybody into the goals from time to time, including the coach, and see how life is in there. Cannot leave tonight without throwing up this little slide, lads. Just cannot leave it. It's in my head as, I suppose, a day that history was made, lads. And two of our guests there on tonight created history a couple of years ago.
Here we have Stephen O'Keefe. We'll highlight both positions. When Anthony's nose goes onto the ball to strike it for the first time, Stephen O'Keefe's on his line. But when Anthony throws it up, Stephen leaves his line, and the interpretation is that the second hit that Anthony Nash hits in the ball is the second strike, not the first. Stephen O'Keefe's bravery here, I mean, we have to give this great credit as well. I was wondering when a guy would come out to meet the goalie, and fair play to Stephen O'Keefe. Anthony Nash again had a fantastic game today, but the world has changed for penalty taken after Stephen O'Keefe.
Well, Stephen mentioned about being wired, lads. I know where I'd be standing if Anthony Nash was hitting that ball. I'd be well behind the net, well behind it. So, super stuff there, lads. Nearly there, the end of this now, nearly the end of it. A very, very good friend of mine, I have often asked him how did you start? What did you do when you were growing up? What did you do when you were 5 and 6 and 7? And he's maybe, I don't know, 36 or 37 now, and he's still doing the same. And in this time of social distancing, lads, what the next little player is going to show us, you know, you could not beat it, because it's something we can all do. It's something we were all reared on, and don't ever get away from it.
Well, Tommy Welch here, my son Finn, my father Mikey, my brother Shane. We're playing a game of goal to goal. The only thing you need is a hurl, a ball, 2 people and 4 jumpers. Yes! You one shot to draw it. Right, ready? Oh, Finn is through. Finn, you're through.
So we have the final. Top corner goal from Finn. Finn versus me in the final.
Yes!
Save.
Finn, back again, Finn. Finn. Hey, back up, quick. Stand in front of it. Stand in front of it. Hold on. No, stand in front of it. Well done. Up you go, quick. Go on.
To win it now, Finn. Bury it to win it now.
Yes!
Goal! Woo! Shows your celebration, Finn.
So that's how Tommy started out, lads. You know, his father got him going there, and all the lads, you know, pucking the ball goal to goal, and it's being passed on now to another generation. So, you know, that's one of the best forms of practice you could have for goalkeeping. One last slide here now is again, and some of the lads have just mentioned it so often. Get down into that wall, get down and practice. You just could not spend enough time against it. So we're going to bring in Owen now, lads, and we're going to have the question and answer there. So just bear with me there just 1 second now while we shoot Owen up here, and Dara will get himself ready as well.
A huge amount of questions in, Martin.
You can be starting there, Dara, if you like, and I'll try and get on onto the platform here now.
Okay, thanks a million to everyone that did put a question in for Owen. Some of them might have been answered as the show went on anyway. It was a great slideshow there from Martin. But Owen, I'm just going to group a couple of these together. A few common themes coming up from different viewers. We'll start with this one. Short puck outs, are they the new way of starting an attack, or is it about retaining possession? What's your thoughts on the tactics behind the short puck out?
Well, it's a bit of both, I suppose. You know, but it's not just the sole responsibility of the goalie now either. You know, it's very important that everybody else is looking for the ball and not one person is getting lazy, because we'll say, for argument's sake, if number 7, the left wing back, is sort of hiding in behind the corner forward, not looking for a ball, well, it sort of closes off that whole side of the field there, so you only have 2/3 to puck to. So it is, look, it's vitally important. You see from Anthony Nash and Nicky Quaid, like with their restarts and the amount of scoring opportunities they get from retaining primary possession from puck out. So it's so important. But I suppose from the other side of it, it's very important how the outfield players set up against that.
And how much of that is pre-rehearsed, Owen? How much of it is off the cuff?
Well, look, maybe some of your stuff to your full back line, half back line is you know, standard enough. You know, if you're trying to get maybe a wing back to move out of position to get to a midfielder or to a half forward line, there has to be a bit of work done on that. And all the lads have mentioned it there, the striking, the likes of, you know, Brian said there, he's striking it at the back net for a couple of balls, and he's visualising where it's going to go, and what he's doing then is putting different lads in different areas, pucking it to him. So that's practicing. You know, how you put in, you know, your different puck out scenarios is up to the coaches then, what they want to set up, whether they want lads running in a different area or running out of a different area, so you want a corner forward coming out onto the ball, that's totally up to the coaches. But some of it does have to be rehearsed, like because if you can get primary possession, it's up to the other team to obviously take it off you. So and the further down the field you can get the ball then as well, the more chance you have of a score. So if you can get it directly to midfielder, half forward, or even better into a full forward line coming out running onto it, it can create up goal chances if you have your half forwards, midfielders shooting in through for an overlap. So all those things are taught out, they are rehearsed, whether we like to say it or not. The shorter ones probably not so much. That's just about the backs looking for the ball, you know, and not hiding into a corner or out onto a wing, you know, because it'll just shut down the whole thing then.
I might bring Damien in there for a question as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dara. So, for a child goalkeeper or a youth goalkeeper, what attributes should a coach be looking for in the young hurler, which would assist them in the selection in the position as a goalkeeper?
Well, I think even a lot of lads, Anthony mentioned it there as well, is just like the general outfield play, like they're touching maybe a short space, like so you'll see outfield players will be practicing drills in a shortened down area, so it's quickening up their wrist work, you know, they're used to lads coming in on them and obviously making good decisions and stuff like that. I always found it benefited me taking part in those drills because it just kept me very sharp, like in match scenarios, I suppose. And it's all going back to what Colm Callan said about, you know, having some sort of relevance to the whole game. You know, so there's no point putting a keeper in a drill that he's never going to perform that action in a match. So, and it's like that with a young person. So with a young player, be it a camogie player or hurler, whatever it is, they have to be good at the very basics. Touch, they're catching the ball, sort of moving with the ball, and that as well. And look, their level of comfort on it, you know, and you'll see, I suppose, the kids that are practicing away from the field, over those that maybe not practicing as much as they should be or whatever. So I just think being a good hurler, and my old coach in Glenmore, Neddy Elward, always said he put me back in the goal because he felt that I was a good hurler. So look, I think that's very, very important at the young age, because they will stop maybe the easier balls coming in. They might stop the harder shots as well. But, you know, if you're not conceding the 4, 5, 6 goals, you know, at underage, you do have a fair chance of winning games, you know.
Very good, Owen. And on the equipment side, there's an awful lot of questions in here about the puck-out hurling. A big boss, small boss, or a synthetic. What's your views on that, Owen?
I would use, normally in the goal, I'd start to use a little bit of a lighter hurl. It'd have a standard size bosh. I'm not saying I use a big shovel or anything like that, but I like it a bit lighter. And I think it's important, especially for a younger player, when they are beginning to play in the goal, that they don't have a heavy plank, because obviously they're not as strong. They find it hard to move the hurl. You know, so to use sort of a lighter hurl, if that means sort of shortening down the bosh for a younger player, get him used to that, because it'll just make sure, you know, it'll get their eye in an awful lot better if they're controlling with a smaller ball or smaller bosh. But then when I'm pucking out the ball, I'd use a slightly heavier hurl, not necessarily a bigger bosh or anything like that, but it's just more solid. But again, you have to be used to that. It's no point changing to a hurl that you're not used to. So I just find with a synthetic hurl, I did use it before when you were normally going long with every single puck out. There's a great strike out of it, don't get me wrong, but I just felt with the, you know, I just didn't use it often enough that I had a level of comfort where I was going to drill a ball 40 yards into a lad's hand. That was my opinion. You know, so I always use the, you know, a timber hurl just before the strike of it. Similar enough what I said in the little video there, the clip. Usually at this time of the year, if we were training, you know, or even if I was going to the alley, I'd use the normal sliotar. Just toughens up the hand. You're using the equipment that you're going to be using in the game. So whatever you are using, just make sure you keep practicing at it, and it's not something that you're pulling out for match day or for training. You have to be using it every single day.
Go ahead, Dara.
For younger hurlers, Owen, and it might tie into what you spoke about there with the hurls, but increasing distance has come up a lot. What can you do to actually increase how far you hit the ball?
Look, it's back to what Mert said as well. You know, the lads who are playing inter-county, you know, they're playing at the top of the game. They've been training for how many years? You spend a couple of months in the gym at the start of the year, getting stronger to do these things, working on these types of actions. So it's not something that a younger fella is going to drive a ball 120 yards, similar enough to Anthony Nash or Stephen O'Keefe or whoever it may be. So there has to be. I'd work on very basic stuff at the start of the year. Look, my core work, my hips, because it all comes from that, how you step into it, you're driving through it. But like for a younger player, when they don't, I suppose, when they're not developing their strength and stuff like that, their technique has to be very good. And that's just worked on a hurl a ball and any sort of ball. It doesn't have to be even in an alley. So they can just get really comfortable striking the ball. And every ball they're striking is a clean one. And I suppose if I'm pucking around outside, I prefer pucking off my left-hand side. It's just, you know, I always pucked around off it when I was younger, that if I was pucking, you know, 5 off my right, I'd always puck 10 off my left or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So, but it's just, you have to get that level of comfort, you know, once you're throwing up the ball, you know you're going to strike every single one of them cleanly. So it's not a case of that, you know, a young lad, 12 years of age, is going to drive a ball 100 yards. It's just making sure that he's getting a proper technique, first of all, and then he'll develop all the other attributes that goes with it as he gets older.
Colm Callanan there, when he was giving us his little spiel, had a good little trick for a goalkeeper that was a bit nervous under a high ball. Would you have anything kind of to add to that on? Yeah, definitely. I think I sort of mentioned it briefly as well, that if especially a younger player, if they're not you know, if they're not comfortable, if they're sort of somewhat nervous about the goal being behind them and thinking about it too much, just pull them out of it and you know, get them doing it without any cones, without any poles or anything like that, because I guarantee you, similar enough to what Cal said there about your man catching the ball out in the middle of the field. Most people are able to catch the ball. They do have the very good basic skills. You know, and it's just that when you do throw them in the goal scenario, that they sort of get a bit nervous. So you have to get them to perfect it out the field. And if that means sort of, you know, somebody standing in front of them having a bit of a distraction, so be it. And then start to introduce the cones, so they can they have to be aware of maybe if a ball is going wide, they're going to leave it go wide or whatever it is. And then maybe a juvenile goal, just that there's something behind them, like, you know, and it's a case of, like, you know, a young player going down to a field, even, you know, if they're hurling out the field, you're not going to throw them in straight away into, you know, a match scenario. You'll do a few skills with them. They have to practice the basics first, and that's no different with a goalkeeper. And it's very important that they have to get comfortable doing stuff out of the goal before you put them into it, you know.
Just a very good question here, and it's very common known. Advice for a young goalkeeper trying to displace the current club keeper.
I suppose, look, it's very hard, because if the more experienced player is not making mistakes, the goalkeeping position it's so hard. It's very hard for somebody coming up without the person that has the number one spot making mistakes, without them, you know, sort of giving away the jersey. It's very, very hard for somebody to be outperforming, because Martin had it in one of the slides there, like a goalie's job is basically to stop the ball going into the goal, but there is goals going to go in, and it's just you prevent making simple mistakes. So if you're doing the very basics right, so whoever this young keeper is, if just keep doing the basics right, once their opportunity comes, then that they've practiced enough that they won't leave the opportunity slip. And it was similar enough with myself. I got a chance in a league game in start 2013. Keeper was injured, and luckily enough, I didn't make a mistake. I took the opportunity, and, you know, still there a few years later. Like, so just when the opportunity does come around, that unfortunately they can't make a mistake. So just be ready for it. Be practicing all the simple stuff, because it's the simple things you don't want to go wrong when the game comes around.
Yeah, I'm not sure that question, Owen, come from Castlecomer there, based on the story Martin told.
Probably did. Martin said it in himself, I'd say.
Yeah, I think he did, yeah. Claire Evans here has an excellent question, well thought out. advice on learning judgment skills, knowing when to close down a player or trust your backs. And also she's looking for a bit of advice on developing mental toughness for goalkeepers. So there's 2 advices looked for there from Claire.
I'll touch on the first bit, I suppose. It's very hard because it depends on different angles. It depends on maybe who's coming after the player. Like if it's a sole case of it's a 2-on-1, 2 forwards and a back, what I'd be saying to the back is that you're trying to wait till the last possible second until he's maybe taking the ball off the her to go catch it. He's straight away out to try close him down. And you're sort of anticipating that half a yard off the line, as an extra back, I suppose, that if he is going to hand pass it over the full back's head or whatever, you're going out and closing it down straight away. But there's no real black and white advice I can give for that. It's about experience, being in the position, and it's your level of comfort with the backs as well, And I know from being with Hughie Lawler there the last couple of years, Pádraig Welch, they knew exactly, even in the bigger games when they mightn't have heard me, they knew exactly when I was going to tell them to go. So it's about practicing, the goalkeeping position is very important. The full back is probably just as important, that they have a very good working relationship, and I know it came up in one of Martin's slides as well, as when the full back or, whoever the cornerback is going to leave in the ball. And it's not a case of that the full back is always going to hear the keeper. They just have to trust each other's judgment. So I'm not too sure if that helps. It's a very, very hard one, to be honest, to give a black and white scenario for. It just comes with experience. It's very hard to probably practice in training scenarios to help on that as well. It's more so their experience in game that would benefit that. What was the second bit, Damien? Sorry.
The advice on developing mental toughness.
Again, it just comes with training. You just have to be very, very good at the basic stuff there, like that all the keepers have gone through, touch, control, or whatever it may be. It's to do this very simple stuff very well. And if you can get your positioning right, you'll give yourself a fair opportunity to stop the bullets that do come around. Now, they mightn't come around every game, so it might be 2, we'll say every 3 games or whatever it'll be. So it's just being constantly ready for that whenever you are called into action, and like, I suppose from my point of view, I did, when I was in there the first couple of years, I did make mistakes, and it was a case of if I made a mistake in the game, I made note of it in my own head. Not something that was going to rattle me for the rest of the game, but I knew that, geez, I was going to spend the next 2 weeks absolutely torturing myself in an alley in training, making sure I didn't make the same mistake. And I was constantly practicing that to making sure that I tried to perfect it, so be it a dropping ball or some sort of a scenario in the game or whatever. So it's perfecting, I suppose, something that you might perceive as your weakness. It's to keep practicing that you don't have any fear or any doubt that if something like that is going to happen in a game, you're so comfortable on the ball, look, you'll just pass it off. I know everybody is talking about there, like, outfield players make mistakes, they probably a couple every half, and nothing is said about it. The game continues on, and it's just unfortunately because the position you're in, it sort of comes with the territory. You have to be very, very cool. If something does happen like that, sort of brush it off. My thing was literally, if a goal went in or I maybe made a mistake, I was up off the ground straight away, and I was not down feeling sorry for myself and being like, oh crap, or trying to look for somebody to blame. I was up. I wanted to get the ball rolling again, or get the game rolling again, puck it out. In those cases, you might have a scenario where the opposing team actually shuts off for a split second so you can ping a ball to a half forward line or whatever the case. So again, those 2 things I suppose it's very hard to give advice on those. It's not just for, black and white, yes or no sort of a thing. You just have to, sort of comes with the experience. The more you play in goal, the more you'll you'll understand, I suppose, what we're talking about, what Stephen O'Keefe spoke about, and what I've just said there as well.
Go ahead, Dara. Thanks, Owen.
Owen, how can coaches change the narrative about goalkeepers, whereby instead of looking for someone to stand in goal, that we're actually deciding who gets to go in goal, if you know what I mean?
Sorry, Dara, say that again. You broke up at the start there.
Sorry, Owen, just in terms of making the goalkeeper an attractive position to play in for young players, how can we do that?
Well, I think the last couple of years with the quality of goalkeepers that are playing at inter-county level, it probably helps with underage teams. Like, young lads do want to sort of have a crack at playing in goal, and but I think giving every player a chance of playing in the goal, like what Martin is saying, that they're seeing it through a goalkeeper's eyes, it makes them realise it's not an easy position. It's certainly not for everyone. So it's given them every opportunity to play every single position when they are younger. So it just make them a better all-round player. And you see the top players there, the likes of Brendan Maher, and can play anywhere from 5 to 12. He played in the full forward line for his club, Bursley, and look, that's probably just from playing every position when he was younger. So it's about exposing them to every possible position and every possible scenario. I think will make them a better overall player when they are a teenager and then maturing into adult hurling. It'll just make them a better all-round player.
One that's come in repeatedly as well, Owen, is about the warm-up. Warm-up on your own as a goalkeeper, or obviously with the other goalkeeper, or do it with the collective?
When I'm in training, be a mixture of both, to be very honest. So normally, I suppose out on the pitch at least a half an hour beforehand. Sort of anything after that, I'd feel I'm a little bit late myself. So we've all our puck outside, sort of movement stuff done, warmed up. And we do some goalie scenario drills, and then obviously when the boys start to warm up, then we'll fall in with them to make sure that we're ready to go for a match as well, But on match day, I'd have all my activation work done, be it core, sort of the hip, the glutes, whatever it is. I'd have all my movement stuff done. Well, the majority of it, if I could at all, done before I get out onto the field. I do some stuff out in the field. But then it's, I'm not too sure which one of the lads mentioned it there. It's, I'd do 12 clean strikes, myself and Darren would, 12 clean strikes along the ground each. And then we'd keep it off the ground. So sort of knee high, hip high. So we're trying to get in a first touch or else try to kill the ball. So 12 clean ones of those, and then 12 clean catches. But then, you have to bring in maybe going out and approaching the ball on a match day then as well. So bringing in the match scenarios as you're warming up, that's very, very important. Same with the catching stuff. Not every ball is you're going to catch in your 6-yard box. Some of them you have to come to the 14-yard line. Maybe some of them even further if players have gone out the field. So it's about bringing in those things. You're sort of tuning into what can potentially happen in a game as well.
Owen, there's a good few questions in about the training for the one-on-one scenarios, and that also brings in the penalty. So how do you train for that? And one of the questions was, what are your thoughts there when you're facing a one-on-one?
Well, the one-on-one, it's important that for younger players that it's not a case of, you have all your forward standing on a 21, literally standing, because we have lads there, if you're standing on a 21, they'll bury every single one of them top corner in the stanchion. You'll never have a chance of stopping any of them, but they're not in-game scenarios. So it's important that they're coming from different angles. Nicky mentioned it on his shot stop and stuff. It's not all coming straight down the centre. So that's, technically your one-on-one stuff is coming in from, even some boys can be running back out from the end line, sort of that angle there. So it's making sure that once the coaches are setting up the drills, that it's not straight down the centre, and that the forwards and whoever is taking the shots, that they're moving, because it makes it very, very easy on the player striking the ball. If they're not moving, like the goalie, should not be stopping it. In my opinion, anyway, if somebody is standing striking a ball from 14, 20 yards out, standing, they should be burying every single one of them. But you very rarely get a shot in a game where you are standing. So from the keeper's point of view then as well, making sure they're getting their body positioning right as the player is moving. So as you see from Colin Callan's save there, Lark Harbour controlled the ball in the middle of the goal, brought it out to the 14-yard, just to the edge of the 14-yard box. But as Lark Harbour was sprinting full belt, Callan just came across 3 steps and covered off the whole angle of the goal. Same with Nicky Quaid's save against Cork there a couple of years ago, or his flick. It wasn't a save or whatever you want to call it, but like he's positioning there and his footwork were outstanding. So that all sort of comes with practicing those, and I'm sure Nicky was practicing those as well. And then I think your last one, Damien, was on the penalties, was it?
Yeah, the 1-on-1, yeah, the penalty on. Yeah,
look, just with the penalties, it's very important to get used to actually being in the goal and somebody taking those shots on you. But it's what I try to do is, I suppose, try read where the person is going to strike the ball, like how they drop it. So if a right-handed person is sort of going striking it reasonably high, they're more than likely going to come across their body, which will be to my right-hand side. So I'm trying to read that. Somebody, say Mark Fanning's penalty there last year against us in the Leinster final, he dropped it quite low. I just didn't get across fast enough to it, but he dropped it quite low. Sort of had an idea he was coming to my left side, but then, there is players then as well, the likes of Canning and, TJ, they'll mix it up, so they can actually work on slicing the ball, and I've seen Enda Rowland doing it as well. So you have to be very, very careful doing that, obviously. But trying to mimic a penalty into a match scenario is probably hard again. I think the 1-on-1 scenarios in training with your forwards running in from different angles, taking shots is probably more beneficial to the keeper, to be honest.
Okay, and James here had a big observation. Owen won 2 All-Stars in years Kilkenny didn't win the All-Irelands. Do you believe that keepers perform better when they're under more pressure, Owen?
Yeah, maybe so, because we've practiced so much. We have to be ballsy enough to put ourselves into the position of wanting to be in the goal. And I just find it that probably a championship game, I just find that I'm more in tune. I've gone to the ball alley, I've done all the stuff sort of, potentially it might be a dry ball. It's just a harder ground. I just find that, it's championship hurling, and I'm, the more importance in the game, the more focused I feel I am. And, so it might be a bit harder trying to focus in down in Wexford Park and a frosty breeze blowing into your face. I don't know what it is like, but no, that's just my opinion. I just feel I come into my own maybe more so in the championship, so maybe when there is more pressure on you, definitely so. Everybody is different, but as Stephen said there, Stephen O'Keefe, it's you just have to sort of confidence has to be seeping off you as well, so other players see it, and they sort of feel it. You don't have to be doing anything crazy or anything like that. It's just how you're carrying yourself on the goal. And I just find, and when there is more pressure, I just find maybe I'm more confident on the goal. So it probably is.
Very good. I might just come in one more there, Darragh. I think it's important to bring it in a younger player who has a coach who delegates the puckouts to somebody else if this younger player misses 1 or 2 puckouts. What advice have you for this younger player who would be very disheartened by this and his confidence would drop? How would he approach the coach to rectify this in the future?
I'm not too sure what age the player is or anything like that. You certainly see it at a younger age, where if there's maybe a bigger player in the full back line that probably has a longer strike, not necessarily a better strike, maybe the coaches feel the ball is better off further away from the goal, but it probably has nothing to do with the player's ability. They're in the goal for a reason, because the coach probably, the coach definitely believes they're good enough there to be there, a good enough hurler, because like all the goalkeepers have said here, you need to be a very good hurler to play in the goal nowadays. And it just might be something that the goalkeeper needs to work away from the pitch, so that he's not going to miss those 1 or 2 balls. So again, practice out in the gable end. I know we're all trying to, well, the pitches are closed or whatever it is, so just be out practicing against the gable end, perfecting every single strike. And then when he does get to the pitch, then, have one of the parents just getting practice on the ball that little bit longer every single time. Don't be forcing the puck out. So get the parent to stand 30 yards away. If he's striking it clean for 20 balls, get him go 40 yards away. Do that for another 20 balls, and so on, so on. Because if the younger player, if he's trying to force the ball, he's not going to be using a natural striking motion. Maybe that's why he's mishitting those 1 or 2. So just to perfect his striking there, and that should help him going forward.
Thanks, Owen.
Owen, can I ask, we've gone through pretty much all the questions. I hope at this stage I summarised a lot of them. 1 or 2 more just to finish up. You spoke about the pressure cooker sometimes for the goalkeeper in a match, and portraying that confidence for the defence. Are you reading that confidence from your players too? I mean, it's hard sometimes with a helmet on, but can you tell by the body language who really wants the ball?
Maybe for a forward, like so far up the field, you mightn't obviously be able to read their body language as much, but definitely a back, and look, mistakes happen, and I'd be constantly trying to make sure that lads are, look, forget about that, don't worry about it. And I think the worst thing for a goalkeeper or a back is that they're sort of harping at each other, and it's not great for the spirit of the team, and you'll see the opposition then will sort of thrive on that as well at the same time. So it's just try to be constructive as much as possible, and try to be given the backs confidence, and and how you sort of portray that constructive criticism. If it is, if you do have to criticize him, that you're not shouting and roaring at him. There will come an opportunity in the game where you might just have a quiet word, just say, rather than coming back through, around the goal, making sure you're going out to the side, stuff like that, rather than shouting and roaring at him. So he'll know next time he'll have to do that. But also be complimenting them then as well at the same time, that if they do something very well, that they know about it. So I think that's important, especially in younger players, that they're not. If there is someone who's better and maybe more vocal or whatever it is, that they're, they are given constructive criticism, and it's not, shouting at players saying that they should be doing that, or you fucking idiot, or whatever it might be. And I think that should be nipped in the bud straight away at underage. And look, if it means whipping off one of your best players, I think you have to do it, and be it if that's the goalkeeper or whoever it is. So. I think they should all be trying to help out each other, and making sure that they're doing their best for each other.
And kind of linked into that, Owen, for parents and coaches that might be watching or listening to us this evening, we all can pinpoint instances of them going behind the goal and trying to dictate a match from behind the goalkeeper, who's not just in the fire line from the front, but sometimes from the back as well. Is that ever a good idea for a parent or a coach to be behind the goal and shouting and roaring?
No, definitely not. Because look, if we'll say, for argument's sake, if they may have made a mistake, the last thing they want is somebody coming behind the goal and telling them what they should have done. Because when a player makes a mistake, regardless of what age they are, they realise they've made the mistake, and it's about giving them some constructive criticism about what they should have done to not make the mistake, rather than telling them, Jesus Christ, what are you doing, sort of a thing. Do you know what I mean? So now, but especially with parents, I know it's quite a delicate topic maybe, but definitely I think the coaches should coach. The parents are there to support them in whatever way they can, but the criticism and maybe tell them what they should have done and stuff like that, I think should be definitely left to the coaches. Because look, I suppose, you know, I might be stepping on somebody's toes here. I don't know, whoever asked the question, or, you know, maybe there's somebody watching. But look, if they're able to be shouting at what players should be doing for the line, they should be spending the Tuesday, the Thursday, the Friday night, the couple of hours in the evenings there and the Saturday mornings, then, you know, teaching the players the basics then, like, do you know what I mean? Rather than coming on a Sunday or whatever it is and shouting and roaring. So it's not helpful at all, like.
Owen, thanks a million. That's most of the questions gone through there now, Martin.
Thanks, Dara and Damien, and indeed Owen. We could go on and on and on. I was a bit worried at the start about keeping people long, but we still literally have hundreds of people logged in here, which is super. I'll just pick up on a couple of things there. I had time just to jot down a few bits in no particular order. Somebody tells me, which I'm aware of, Christy O'Connor has a few brilliant YouTubes up there, so I'm sure if you Google Christy O'Connor goalkeeping drills, you will get them. A few other people asked there about how do you practice in the current climate on your own. Well, all of the coaches so far, all of the keepers have said, get out on that wall. Not just nowadays, every time. Even when we're back to full playing, get onto that wall, hugely important. A good old friend of mine, I haven't seen him in years, and he was a serious keeper, Corkman, of course, and he asked the question, all great goalies are born, not made. Yes or no, he asked Owen. Well, I'm not going to let you answer that, Owen, because my good friend Ben Darney, he was a brilliant keeper, and in his case, it was born. Because Ben, what you had was natural. You couldn't coach it, right? You just couldn't coach it. A question there about a young keeper that might not be confident to catch a ball, should they block? Well, I'd say certainly yes. If you're not confident in catching, of course you block it. You do. Your first job is keep that ball out. You know, it's the same with wing backs, half backs. Your first job is stop the ball going through. You know, there's no point in watching too much television and trying to emulate the lads that were on tonight if you're not confident. So do what you can do and do it as well as you can. There are quite a few questions there about how do you increase your puck out distance. Lads, you know, to be straight about it, you increase your distance by pucking more and more and more. And again, outfield players the same. I would say every third night you should be pucking ball as long as you can puck it, right and left. And over a period of time, you will develop a longer strike. And, you know, again, it's one of the skills we should be practicing regularly. We do fitness tests and all that kind of stuff, but do we do skills tests? You know, how long can you puck right and left? And I go farther, how long can you puck on the ground right and left, etc. But let's see, oh yeah, a big one here now that I'd have, I'm glad it came up. Should we work on short puck outs for under 14s? Particularly if they're not that strong and they're maybe playing in the B and C grade. Owen, I'm going to let you answer that and I'm then going to answer it because I'd say you know what I'm going to say.
Look,
under 14s, Owen. Under 14s, not strong, not confident. A B or a C team, should they be working on short puck outs?
Look, at that age, definitely not. No. Look, and back to myself, I never made a development squad and I was never deemed good enough when I was younger. And I just practiced every single day before school, before the bus came. As soon as it got off the bus, I had the sliotar in my hand ready to go. So I'd get that extra minute before the mother called me for the dinner. So like the basics have to be practiced, you know, you know, the short puck outs at under 14, no, definitely is not one of those, like, you know, and, you know, it's back to the boys were talking about it there, and even you were saying it there as well, Martin, like, it's a simple game, like, there's no point overcomplicating it. And, you know, I've gone talking to clubs and, you know, maybe chatting to lads about goalkeeping stuff, and they're looking at what the Premiership soccer players are doing on YouTube and stuff like this. It's not worth a curse, like. And, you know, because it has no relevance to hurling whatsoever, no relevance to a hurling keeper, certainly. So, yeah, look, I think the basic skills, you know, will benefit them an awful lot more when they are up 18, 20, going into adult hurling. If they're very good at, you know, their hurling is an awful lot better, I think it'll suit them.
Well, I'm delighted you said that on, because, you know, my take on that would be, even at inter-county level, puck outs, short ones that don't always come off. And you're looking at top keepers and you're looking at top defenders. And Nicky won't mind me saying this if he's looking in. A couple of years ago there in the league semi-final, I think you were playing Tipperary, and Nicky is one of these keepers that could put a ball in your eye at 100 metres. And at one stage in the game, he opted for a short one, and I don't know, Bubbles or somebody caught it and buried it, a goal. And Limerick lost the game. Now, thanks be to God, Kilkenny went on and won the league. But that was coming from one of the top keepers in Ireland. So you'll bring that down several notches, even club in Kilkenny, which is a pretty decent level. And how many keepers, for a start, have the ability to pinpoint that short puck out? That's the first part of it. How many defenders are comfortable enough to take it? And when they do take it, they still have to put it up the field. Now you bring that down several notches to under 40 in Rhine in one of the top counties. You know, your chances of a disaster happening are rising. Now you bring that down the line further and go down to what this person is talking about. Not a strong county, a B or a C team. I would say to those players, put that ball down the field as far as you can. And you know, the worst thing that'll happen is that it'll come back up the field here. So I'd be very strong on that. Now, right, just one other point there I'll make is that somebody was asking about how to encourage players to step into the goals. I think we should develop that goalie challenge there that Tommy Welch was demonstrating in his back garden. You know, I think clubs should have a little bit of fun sometimes. And this could even be with adults. You know, you're trying to see, you know, your goalie, TJ Reid versus Owen Murphy, you know, who's going to score the most, and set up a little competition there where we see who can win through over a period of time. That from time to time, we're making our little goals there and we have the goalie challenge and see who's the top person. And rotate the keepers. So look at guys, we're here quite a while. I just like to thank Damien and Dara there backstage again for a superb job. I'd like to thank Owen for all the expertise he has shared with us, and all our guest speakers there tonight, the lads. You know, I rang the guys and I said, look, if we could get 3 or 4 of them to do a little clip for me, it'd be brilliant. But I won't say not surprisingly, because I'm not surprised in the slightest. Every single one of them, you know, they couldn't be helpful enough, and it's brilliant. And we just need to do a little bit more on it. So next week we're changing the tactics a slight bit. I don't know how it's going to work out, but we're attempting to bring something a little bit different, and we're going up to Schlockneil in County Derry, a small little area, no different than, I suppose, on your own club down in Glenmore, a small area. And you guys went on and won an All-Ireland there years ago and were tremendous. So we're going to have a little look at Schlockneil, and we're going to speak to the Hurling manager, Michael McShane, and the Camogie manager, Dominic McKinley. And we're going to speak to Brendan Rogers, the dual player, and Aoife Cassidy, the Camogie player. And we're just trying to try and see, have they any idea what happened up there to make them so successful? And in the background next week, we're going to have 6 prominent people whose names will not be revealed until you come online with us next week, and hopefully we'll have a good old chat. Again, like the short puck out, the worst, or the long puck out, the worst thing that happen is the ball will come back down the field here. So look at folks, we'll close the show now, and thank you so much for your attendance tonight, and we hope you got something from it. And with all the questions coming in there, we couldn't answer them all, so maybe we'll have to have a replay on. So I'll give you the last word there on if you just want to say goodbye to people.
Yeah, listen, thanks lads for having me on, and you know, everybody stay safe. It's I suppose it's crazy times for us, but look, the GA will come back around, and it just goes to show how important it is to everyone. So looking forward to whenever that is, and as I said, thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much, Owen, and thanks to everybody. Good night.
Cheers, lads.